I never thought the person I trusted most would steal everything from me while I slept. My name is Lily Chen, and 3 months ago, I discovered that my ex-boyfriend Marcus had drained our joint savings account of $47,000 and disappeared without a trace. What I did next didn't just shock my friends and family, it shocked me too. But before I tell you exactly how I got my revenge and my money back, let me paint you the picture of just how devastating this betrayal really was. Because when someone you love steals from you, they don't just take your money. They steal your trust, your future plans, and your sense of security. They make you question every single moment you shared together, wondering what was real and what was just an elaborate con. It was a Tuesday morning in September when my world came crashing down. I was rushing to get ready for work, trying to transfer money from our savings to cover rent, when I saw the balance, $0.00. My hands started shaking as I refreshed the page over and over again, thinking it had to be some kind of banking error. $47,000 doesn't just vanish into thin air. I called the bank immediately, my voice trembling as I explained the situation to the customer service representative. She put me on hold for what felt like an eternity before coming back with news that made my stomach drop. The money had been transferred out in 3 separate transactions over the past week, all authorized by the other account holder, Marcus. My legs gave out beneath me and I collapsed onto my kitchen floor, staring at the ceiling as the reality of what had happened sank in. This wasn't just our emergency fund. This was money I had been saving for 5 years to buy my first home. Money from overtime shifts at the hospital where I work as a registered nurse. Money from skipping vacations and cooking dinner at home instead of going out. Money that represented my dreams, my future, my independence. I tried calling Marcus 17 times that day. Each call went straight to voicemail. His cheerful voice telling me to leave a message felt like a cruel joke. "Hey babe, it's me," I said after the first beep. "There's something wrong with our account. Please call me back as soon as you get this." I tried to keep my voice steady, still hoping there was some reasonable explanation. But deep down, I already knew the truth. The signs had been there for weeks, maybe even months, and I had chosen to ignore them. Marcus had been acting strange lately, secretive about his phone calls, evasive about his whereabouts. He claimed he was working on a big business deal that would make us both wealthy, but he never wanted to discuss the details. When I pressed him for information, he would get defensive and accuse me of not trusting him. Trust. The word felt bitter in my mouth now. I had trusted him with everything. I had trusted him with my heart, with my body, with my future, and with my life savings. And he had betrayed that trust in the most devastating way possible. By that evening, it became clear that Marcus wasn't coming home. His closet was half empty, his laptop was gone, and so was the small safe where we kept important documents. I found a note tucked under his pillow, written in his familiar handwriting. "Lily, I'm sorry it had to end this way. I needed the money for an opportunity that couldn't wait. I'll pay you back when I can. Please don't try to find me." That note sent me into a rage unlike anything I had ever experienced. I threw it across the room and screamed until my throat was raw. How dare he reduce 5 years of our relationship and my entire financial future to a casual apology and an empty promise? How dare he steal from me and then ask me not to look for him? I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, researching everything I could about financial fraud and theft. I learned about joint account laws, about what constitutes embezzlement, about private investigators and asset recovery services. I discovered online forums full of people who had been through similar situations, sharing their stories of betrayal and their strategies for getting justice. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years and drove straight to the police station. Officer Martinez, a kind woman in her 40s with tired eyes, took my statement with patience and professionalism. She explained that since Marcus was an authorized user on the account, it would be difficult to prove theft in the traditional sense. The money had been taken legally, even if it was morally wrong. But she also told me something that would change everything. She said that if I could prove Marcus had taken the money with the intent to permanently deprive me of it, and if I could show that he had used deception to gain access to those funds, I might have a case for fraud. The key would be gathering evidence of his intent and his lies. That afternoon, I started making a list of everything I knew about Marcus and his recent behavior. I wrote down names of his friends, his family members, his coworkers. I documented every suspicious conversation, every evasive answer, every red flag I had ignored. I gathered screenshots of his social media posts, copies of text messages, and photos from our relationship. I also started calling people in Marcus's life, pretending I was worried about him and asking if anyone had heard from him. His mother told me she hadn't spoken to him in months. His best friend and Jake seemed genuinely surprised when I told him Marcus had left town suddenly. But his coworker Daniel let something slip that made my blood boil. Daniel mentioned that Marcus had been talking for weeks about a cryptocurrency investment opportunity that required a significant upfront payment. He said Marcus seemed really excited about it and claimed he had found a way to get the money he needed. When I pressed Daniel for more details, he clammed up, saying he probably shouldn't have mentioned it. Cryptocurrency. Of course. Marcus had always been fascinated by get-rich-quick schemes and alternative investments. He had lost money on day trading, on penny stocks, on some multi-level marketing program that promised passive income. But I had never imagined he would steal from me to fund his latest obsession. I spent the next week diving deep into Marcus's digital footprint. I accessed our shared Netflix account and noticed he had been watching shows about cryptocurrency and financial independence. I checked our shared Amazon account and found that he had purchased books about offshore banking and asset protection. I even discovered that he had been Googling phrases like how to disappear without a trace and countries with no extradition treaties. The evidence was mounting, but I needed more. I needed proof of where he had gone and what he had done with my money. That's when I made a decision that surprised everyone who knew me. I hired a private investigator. Detective Rebecca Walsh was nothing like the gritty characters you see in movies. She was a former FBI agent in her 50s who ran a small but successful investigation firm specializing in financial crimes. She listened to my story with professional detachment, taking notes on a yellow legal pad and asking pointed questions about Marcus's habits and connections. Her fee was steep, but I didn't care. I was determined to get my money back, no matter what it took. Detective Walsh explained that she would start by tracing the money transfers and looking for patterns in Marcus's recent financial activity. She would also conduct surveillance on his known associates and use her law enforcement contacts to track his movements. Within a week, Detective Walsh called me with her first breakthrough. She had traced the stolen money to a cryptocurrency exchange account that Marcus had opened using fake identification documents. The money had been converted to Bitcoin and then transferred to multiple digital wallets, making it nearly impossible to track through traditional banking methods. But Detective Walsh had also discovered something even more shocking. Marcus hadn't acted alone. He was part of a sophisticated fraud ring that targeted women in romantic relationships, building trust over months or years before stealing their savings and disappearing. The FBI had been investigating this group for over a year, and my case provided a crucial piece of evidence they needed to make arrests. I felt sick when I learned the truth. Everything about our relationship had been a lie. Marcus had targeted me specifically because I was a nurse with a steady income and no family nearby to ask questions. He had manipulated me, isolated me from friends, and systematically gained access to my financial accounts. I wasn't his girlfriend, I was his victim. But I also felt something else. I felt powerful. Because now I knew exactly who I was dealing with, and I had the resources to fight back. Detective Walsh connected me with FBI agent Jennifer Reeves, who explained that they were preparing to arrest Marcus and his associates within the next few weeks. My testimony and evidence would be crucial to their case. Agent Reeves also told me something that filled me with hope. Because Marcus had used my stolen money to purchase cryptocurrency, and because cryptocurrency transactions were recorded on a public blockchain, there was a possibility of recovering at least some of my funds. The FBI had developed new techniques for tracing and seizing digital assets, and they were confident they could help me get my money back. As I sat in Agent Reeves's office, signing documents and providing additional evidence, I realized that my story was far from over. Marcus thought he had outsmarted me, thought he could steal my future and disappear without consequences. He had no idea that his victim was about to become his worst nightmare. The next phase of my plan would require patience, courage, and a willingness to do things I had never imagined myself capable of. But I was ready for whatever came next. Marcus had underestimated me, and he was about to learn just how big a mistake that was. The waiting was the hardest part. Agent Reeves had warned me that federal investigations move slowly, that building an airtight case takes time. But every day that passed felt like another day Marcus was getting away with destroying my life. I threw myself into work, picking up extra shifts at the hospital to distract myself from the constant anxiety gnawing at my stomach. 3 weeks after meeting with the FBI, Detective Walsh called me with news that made my heart race. They had found Marcus. He wasn't hiding on some tropical island like I had imagined. He was living in a luxury apartment complex in Austin, Texas, driving a brand new BMW and posting photos on Instagram of expensive dinners and weekend trips to Las Vegas. The arrogance of it made my blood boil. While I was eating ramen noodles and working double shifts to rebuild my savings, he was living it up on my stolen money. But Detective Walsh had even better news. The FBI had been monitoring his activities for weeks, and they had discovered something Marcus didn't know. His cryptocurrency investments had failed spectacularly. The digital currency he had purchased with my $47,000 had crashed within days of his investment. He had lost almost everything, desperately trying to recover his losses by making increasingly risky trades. The money that remained was sitting in a digital wallet that the FBI could trace and potentially seize. But here's where the story takes a turn that even I didn't see coming. Agent Reeves called me into her office the following Monday with a proposition that sounded like something out of a crime novel. The FBI wanted to use me as bait to catch Marcus and his entire fraud ring. The plan was brilliantly simple and terrifyingly complex at the same time. Marcus had been contacting other women online, looking for his next victim to fund his increasingly desperate financial situation. The FBI had been monitoring his dating profiles and social media activity, watching him repeat the same patterns that he had used on me. Agent Reeves explained that they wanted me to create a fake online persona and make contact with Marcus through a dating app. The goal was to get him to admit to the theft on recorded conversations, to gather evidence of his fraud schemes, and ultimately to lure him into a situation where they could arrest him and his associates simultaneously. My first reaction was absolute terror. The thought of talking to Marcus again, even under false pretenses, made me physically ill. I had spent months trying to heal from the trauma of his betrayal, and now they were asking me to voluntarily put myself back in contact with the person who had destroyed my sense of trust and security. But my second reaction was something I didn't expect. Pure, cold rage mixed with a desire for justice that surprised me with its intensity. Marcus had stolen more than my money. He had stolen my peace of mind, my ability to trust future relationships, my sense of safety in the world. This was my chance to take back control, to turn the tables on him in a way that would ensure he faced consequences for what he had done. I told Agent Reeves I needed 24 hours to think about it. That night, I called my sister Emily in California and told her everything. Emily had never liked Marcus, had always said there was something off about him that she couldn't put her finger on. When I finished explaining the FBI's proposal, she was quiet for a long moment. "Lily," she finally said, her voice serious in a way I rarely heard from my usually light-hearted sister. "This sounds incredibly dangerous. What if he recognizes you? What if something goes wrong? What if he gets violent when he realizes he's been trapped?" Her concerns were valid, and they echoed the fears that had been keeping me awake since Agent Reeves first mentioned the plan. But Emily also said something that crystallized my decision. She reminded me of who I was before Marcus, of the strong, independent woman who had worked her way through nursing school, who had saved $47,000 through discipline and sacrifice, who had never backed down from a challenge. "You're not the same person who fell for his lies," she told me. "You're smarter now, stronger now, and you have the FBI backing you up. If anyone can pull this off and get justice, it's you." The next morning, I walked into Agent Reeves's office and told her I was in. The preparation phase took 2 weeks and was more intensive than anything I had ever experienced. The FBI created an entirely new identity for me, complete with fake social media profiles, a fabricated background story, and professional photos that had been digitally altered to make me look different enough that Marcus wouldn't immediately recognize me. My new persona was Jessica Martinez, a recently divorced marketing executive from Phoenix who had received a substantial settlement and was looking to invest in cryptocurrency and alternative assets. The story was designed to push all of Marcus's buttons, presenting me as exactly the kind of vulnerable, wealthy target he preferred. Agent Reeves and her team coached me on how to communicate with Marcus, how to gradually build trust while gathering incriminating evidence, and how to steer conversations toward topics that would reveal his criminal activities. I practiced with FBI agents playing Marcus's role, learning how to stay calm under pressure and how to ask the right questions without seeming suspicious. They also equipped me with sophisticated recording equipment that looked like ordinary jewelry and accessories: a necklace with a tiny microphone, earrings with audio transmitters, a bracelet with a panic button that would immediately alert the FBI if I felt threatened. The technology was so advanced, it felt like something from a spy movie. The most challenging part was psychological preparation. FBI psychologist Dr. Amanda Foster worked with me for hours, helping me understand Marcus's manipulation tactics and teaching me how to protect my emotional well-being during what would inevitably be a traumatic experience. She explained that sociopaths like Marcus were skilled at reading people and exploiting their weaknesses, and that I would need to stay constantly alert to avoid falling back into old patterns. Dr. Foster also warned me about something called trauma bonding, where victims sometimes develop positive feelings toward their abusers during prolonged contact. She taught me grounding techniques to use if I started feeling confused or emotionally compromised, and she made me promise to attend therapy sessions throughout the operation. On a Thursday morning in December, exactly 4 months after Marcus had stolen my money, I created a profile on the dating app where he was most active. My fake photos showed an attractive woman in her early 30s, professional but approachable, with just enough hints of wealth and vulnerability to catch his attention. Within 6 hours, he had sent me a message. "Hi, Jessica. I saw your profile and felt compelled to reach out. You have such beautiful eyes and an intriguing smile. I'm Marcus, and I'd love to get to know you better. Are you free for coffee sometime this week?" Reading his words made me feel physically sick. It was the same charm, the same calculated approach he had used on me years earlier. But this time, I was ready for him. This time, I was the one with the secret agenda. My hands were shaking as I typed my response, but my voice was steady when I read it aloud to Agent Reeves for approval. "Hi, Marcus. Thank you for the sweet message. I'd love to meet for coffee. I'm new to online dating after my divorce, so I'm a bit nervous, but you seem genuine. When and where works for you?" The game had begun, and I was determined to win. Marcus had no idea that his next victim was actually his previous victim, armed with federal agents and a burning desire for justice. He thought he was hunting for another woman to manipulate and rob. Instead, he was walking directly into a trap that would destroy him just as thoroughly as he had tried to destroy me. Over the next few days, we exchanged messages that followed a predictable pattern. Marcus was charming, attentive, and gradually probing for information about my financial situation. He shared carefully crafted stories about his successful business ventures and his expertise in high-return investments. Every word was designed to build trust and position himself as someone who could help me grow my divorce settlement. I played my part perfectly, expressing just the right amount of interest in his investment advice while maintaining enough skepticism to seem realistic. Agent Reeves monitored every conversation, coaching me on how to respond and what topics to explore. We were building a case one message at a time, gathering evidence that would ensure Marcus spent years in federal prison. But we were also walking a dangerous line. The longer I stayed in character, the more real the psychological manipulation became. Despite knowing exactly who Marcus was and what he had done to me, I sometimes found myself genuinely enjoying our conversations, remembering why I had fallen for his charm in the first place. Dr. Foster had warned me this would happen, but experiencing it firsthand was disturbing in ways I hadn't anticipated. It made me understand how other victims had fallen for Marcus's schemes, how easy it was to believe his lies when he was focused entirely on making you feel special and understood. The coffee shop meeting was scheduled for the following Saturday at 2 p.m. Agent Reeves had chosen the location carefully, a busy Starbucks in downtown with multiple exit points and excellent sight lines for surveillance. I arrived 30 minutes early, my heart pounding so hard I was sure other customers could hear it. I had spent hours that morning getting ready, transforming myself into Jessica Martinez. My hair was styled differently. I wore contacts instead of my usual glasses, and my makeup was heavier than I normally preferred. The FBI had provided me with an expensive handbag and jewelry that would support my cover story about the divorce settlement. When Marcus walked through the door, I felt like I might faint. Seeing him in person after all these months brought back a flood of memories, both good and terrible. He looked exactly the same, tall and confident with that easy smile that had once made my knees weak. But now I knew what lurked beneath that charming exterior. He scanned the coffee shop until his eyes found me, and for a terrifying moment I thought he would recognize me immediately. But his face lit up with what appeared to be genuine pleasure as he approached my table. The disguise was working. "Jessica," he said, extending his hand with that familiar warmth in his voice. "You're even more beautiful in person. Thank you for agreeing to meet me." I shook his hand, fighting to keep my expression neutral despite the rage building in my chest. "Thank you, Marcus. You're very kind. I hope you don't mind that I got here a bit early. I'm still getting used to this whole dating thing." "Not at all," he replied, settling into the chair across from me. "I appreciate punctuality. It shows respect for other people's time." The irony of his words almost made me laugh out loud. This from the man who had disappeared in the middle of the night without so much as a goodbye. But I maintained my composure, reminding myself that every word of our conversation was being recorded by the FBI team positioned throughout the coffee shop. We talked for over an hour, and I had to admit that Marcus was exceptional at what he did. He asked thoughtful questions about my fake divorce, expressed sympathy for my fictional struggles, and gradually steered the conversation toward financial topics. He mentioned his investment consulting business and casually dropped hints about the impressive returns he had achieved for other clients. I played the part of the vulnerable divorcee perfectly, expressing uncertainty about managing my settlement money and admitting that I felt overwhelmed by all the investment options available. Marcus leaned forward with concerned interest, offering to help me understand the markets and promising to introduce me to some low-risk, high-reward opportunities. By the time we parted ways, he had suggested a second meeting where he could show me some specific investment strategies. I agreed enthusiastically, thanking him for being so generous with his time and expertise. As I watched him walk away, I felt a mixture of satisfaction and disgust. The trap was working exactly as Agent Reeves had predicted. That evening, I met with the FBI team to review the recording and plan our next moves. Agent Reeves was pleased with how smoothly the first meeting had gone. but she warned me that Marcus would likely become more aggressive in his sales pitch as our fake relationship progressed. The second meeting took place at an upscale restaurant the following week. Marcus had insisted on paying for dinner, claiming he wanted to celebrate our new friendship. He arrived with a tablet full of charts and graphs, ready to dazzle me with his financial expertise. Over expensive wine and perfectly prepared steaks, Marcus launched into his presentation about cryptocurrency investments. He showed me fabricated testimonials from satisfied clients who had doubled or tripled their money within months. He explained how traditional financial advisors were stuck in the past, missing out on the revolutionary opportunities available in digital currencies. I listened with rapt attention, asking naive questions that allowed him to position himself as the expert who could guide me to financial freedom. But I also pushed back occasionally, expressing concerns about the risks involved and mentioning that my divorce attorney had warned me to be cautious with my settlement money. Marcus handled my objections with practiced ease, acknowledging my concerns while systematically dismantling them with logical-sounding arguments and emotional appeals. He talked about the importance of taking calculated risks, about the regret I would feel if I missed out on life-changing opportunities because of excessive caution. As the evening progressed, he became more personal in his approach. He shared stories about his own financial struggles and how cryptocurrency investments had transformed his life. He painted a picture of the future we could build together, combining his expertise with my resources to create lasting wealth and security. It was masterfully done, and I could see how women with less preparation and support would find his pitch irresistible. The combination of romantic attention and financial promise was intoxicating, especially for someone who felt vulnerable and uncertain about their future. But I also noticed details that would have escaped me before my FBI training. The way Marcus checked his phone repeatedly throughout dinner, the slight tension in his voice when I asked specific questions about his track record, the calculated timing of his personal revelations designed to build emotional connection at crucial moments in his sales presentation. By the end of the evening, Marcus had proposed that I invest $50,000 in a cryptocurrency portfolio that he would personally manage. He promised guaranteed returns of at least 20% within 6 months, with the potential for much higher profits if the market conditions remained favorable. I told him I needed time to think about it, that $50,000 was a significant portion of my settlement, and I wanted to be absolutely certain before making such a major decision. He accepted my hesitation gracefully, but I could see the predatory hunger in his eyes when he thought I wasn't looking. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus launched a full court press to convince me to invest. He sent daily text messages with market updates and success stories. He called me every few days to check in and address any concerns I might have. He even sent flowers to my fake apartment with a note thanking me for trusting him enough to consider his proposal. The psychological pressure was intense, and I found myself struggling to maintain emotional distance despite knowing exactly what he was doing. Dr. Foster increased our therapy sessions and reminded me constantly that Marcus was a predator who had destroyed multiple lives in pursuit of easy money. During our third face-to-face meeting, I finally agreed to move forward with the investment. Marcus was visibly excited as I handed him a cashier's check for $50,000 that the FBI had provided as evidence. He promised to have the money invested within 24 hours and assured me that I had made the smartest financial decision of my life. What Marcus didn't know was that the check was fake, designed to trigger additional charges when he attempted to deposit it. More importantly, every conversation about the investment had been recorded, providing clear evidence of his fraudulent schemes and criminal intent. Agent Reeves had explained that we needed Marcus to actually accept money and make promises about returns before we could arrest him for fraud. The fake check satisfied the legal requirements while protecting the FBI's budget and ensuring that Marcus couldn't claim he had been entrapped into committing a crime he wouldn't have otherwise committed. As I sat across from Marcus, watching him examine the check with barely concealed greed, I felt a sense of satisfaction unlike anything I had ever experienced. This man had stolen my future, destroyed my ability to trust, and left me emotionally and financially devastated. Now he was about to pay the price for his crimes. Marcus tucked the check into his jacket pocket and reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "Jessica," he said, with what appeared to be genuine emotion, "you won't regret this decision. I'm going to take excellent care of your money, and more importantly, I'm going to take excellent care of you." The words made my skin crawl, but I smiled and thanked him for his guidance and support. Inside, I was counting down the hours until the FBI would make their move and Marcus would finally face justice for everything he had done. But Agent Reeves had one more surprise in store, something that would make Marcus's downfall even more complete and satisfying than I had imagined. The operation was about to enter its final phase, and Marcus was walking directly into the trap that would destroy not just him, but his entire criminal organization. The next morning, Marcus called me with barely contained excitement. The cryptocurrency markets were moving faster than expected, he said, and there was an opportunity to double our initial investment if we acted quickly. All I needed to do was provide another $25,000 within the next 48 hours. I pretended to be overwhelmed by the opportunity and the timeline, expressing concern about accessing that much additional cash so quickly. Marcus reassured me that he understood my hesitation, but stressed that opportunities like this were rare, and that waiting could mean missing out on life-changing profits. This was exactly what Agent Reeves had predicted. Marcus was escalating his demands now that he believed he had me hooked, trying to extract as much money as possible before disappearing. But instead of another fake check, we had something much better planned for him. I agreed to meet Marcus that evening to discuss the additional investment, suggesting we meet at my apartment since I would need to access my financial documents anyway. Marcus eagerly accepted, probably thinking this would give him a chance to search for additional assets he could target. What he didn't realize was that my fake apartment was actually an FBI safe house, equipped with cameras and microphones in every room. Agent Reeves and her team would be monitoring everything from a surveillance van parked across the street, ready to move in the moment Marcus committed enough crimes to ensure a lengthy prison sentence. As I prepared for what would be our final meeting, I reflected on how much I had changed since that terrible morning when I discovered my empty bank account. The woman Marcus had stolen from was gone, replaced by someone stronger, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous to people who preyed on others. Marcus had taught me that the world contained people who would smile at you while systematically destroying your life. But the FBI had taught me that I didn't have to be a victim, that I could fight back and win. Tonight, I would use everything I had learned to ensure that Marcus never hurt another woman the way he had hurt me. The final confrontation was about to begin, and I was ready for whatever came next. That evening, I arrived at the safe house 2 hours early to do final equipment checks with the FBI team. The apartment looked convincingly lived in, complete with personal photos of my fake life and financial documents scattered strategically across the coffee table. Agent Reeves ran through the plan one last time, emphasizing that my safety was their top priority and that I should use the panic signal the moment I felt threatened. At exactly 7 o'clock, Marcus knocked on the door. I opened it wearing a nervous smile, playing the part of an anxious investor who was about to make another major financial decision. He stepped inside carrying a leather briefcase and a bottle of champagne, clearly expecting to celebrate closing another deal. "The apartment is lovely," he said, scanning the room with those calculating eyes I now recognized so well. "You have excellent taste, Jessica." "Thank you," I replied, guiding him toward the living room where my fake financial documents were waiting. I have to admit, I'm still nervous about moving so quickly on this second investment. $25,000 is a lot of money. Marcus set down his briefcase and moved closer to me, placing his hands on my shoulders in what was meant to be a reassuring gesture. "Jessica," he said, his voice dropping to that intimate tone he used when he wanted to manipulate someone. Trust is the foundation of any successful partnership, whether in business or in life. I would never put your money at risk unless I was absolutely certain about the outcome. Marcus was arrested that night along with 6 members of his fraud ring. The FBI recovered $38,000 of my stolen money and seized his assets. He's now serving 12 years in federal prison. But the real victory wasn't the money or seeing him in handcuffs. It was discovering that I'm stronger than I ever imagined, that victims can become victors when they refuse to stay silent. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply refusing to let someone else's betrayal define your future.